Hello. Welcome to another edition of the Buddy Martin Show. On a Wednesday night, that means it's Allie Pete Wilbur tonight. She'll be joining us momentarily. Special guest Nick Torre will also be with us. We'll talk about what if, what could be, what was, and what have you. Also, how the young stud, DJ Lagway, looked in the All-Star game today. Allie reported on that. So stay tuned. We're coming your way right now. Tell your friends and neighbors. The Buddy Martin Show, yes, it is, back on the air. Check us out right now here on this channel.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Standing by in the orange and blue room. We'll say good evening. This is the best part of the show. Rick Allie aboard. Allie Pete Wilbur of Peek Inside the Gators. Hello, Allie. Happy New Year.
Hey, buddy. Happy New Year.
Yeah, how about that? We made it to another year. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about tonight. And, I know you try real hard as to why to find positive things to say about people. Not really easy to stay in time, but there were some news events today about a player or two Florida's involved with. But before that, how was your holiday and how's the family?
Holiday was good. My family is great. My daughter that had surgery a couple weeks ago is finally, I think, 100% recovered, which means Eric and I can slowly recover, get some sleep back and such. Yeah. But everybody's good, ready to take on 2024.
Well, that's good. Glad to know she's doing well. That's not an easy operation. I had it later, and it's not easy. So tonight we're going to talk to Nick, and I want to get. I think you and Nick are two of the brighter people on the beat that think beyond what's in front of their face. And I had a sort of philosophical question tonight, and hypothetical for sure. Well, among the other things is if Billy Napier were to do this over again, what should he do differently? Now, we gained some insight. Things have changed. Targets have changed. The game has changed. A lot of things. But most of all, what could he do differently? I want you to think about that one for a minute. And, hey, Allie, I know you're a student of Gator football. Do you realize what happened 27 years ago today?
Yes, 27 years ago today, Florida defeated Florida State in the Sugar Bowl for the national championship. I believe it was 52-20. I'd have to go back there.
But who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting? I was 12 years old. I remember this like it was yesterday. Yeah. Danny Warfel, James Bates, so many Gator greats from my childhood. One of the core memories, I think, from Gator football for me.
It was a great couple of weeks because of the way things happened. They had to fall just right, as you know. I recounted those in the Spurrier book. What had to happen did happen. And I wouldn't want to say they backed into it, but they needed help. The BCS, by the way, the old BCS doesn't look too bad now, because
I've always been a massive fan of BCS. I think you need to remove the human element as much as possible. We all have biases, even if, we try not to. And, with the playoffs, it's a new committee every couple years. So different people look at things differently. They come to conclusions in different ways. And so that makes it not, the same methodology year in and year out. And that's kind of a problem for me. And, we saw it this year. Every year, I think that, there's been something. I think they mostly get it right. And I think the champion ends up being correct each year. But I think the BCS was the superior product.
It was great, and we'll get back to today. But 27 years ago, what a night for me! I remember it so vividly. I was there for the game, and having lived it as your family did, all these years of not winning a real championship, there's a magical moment that happened. Florida got its first national championship. They didn't get it till the next morning, till the final poll came in. But it was a fait accompli. They knew we were going to get it, and it was just a magical night. That night, Steve Spurrier went around hugging people. He even hugged media. He even hugged me. It's the only time I've ever seen him hugging people that night. And it was just a wonderful occasion and one we'll always remember. But back to what you were talking about, how things have changed, are changing. And now the question is, how much more will they change? Something you and I and Nick can talk about tonight. Looking back on the two championship games, one might say, what more could you ask for than two games that came down to the final play, which, and well maxed, and you couldn't argue who belonged and who didn't. Certainly that was taken care of. And so
we saw some great football. I did see on social media, Florida State fans had something to say. I can't imagine that a Florida State team that we saw the last couple of weeks fares any better. I think that they give a worse game than we saw to any of the four teams that played. The team that has the most legitimate argument is Georgia, sitting at home. A team that won 28 straight games, went 12-0 in the regular season with an SEC schedule, and would have been favored against any of the four teams that we saw play on January 2nd. So, that's the team with the argument. But we saw two great football games. It's hard to ask for a whole lot more than what we saw on Saturday. And honestly, the national championship matchup is the two teams that I didn't think would be there. So I guess why you play the games, college football is awesome. And I think the committee got it right, unless you're going to argue that Georgia should be there. And I'm okay with that argument. I don't think Florida State has a legitimate argument. They wouldn't have fared any better than these four.
Well, if I were ranking the teams, now I had not seen, to be honest with you, had not seen much of Washington.
Sure.
And really didn't know Michigan that well, although I'd seen them play. Yeah. But I will say I would have put them right there, one or two. It's the best team I saw in the country. If you want to take the eye test, we saw play. And I think they're as good as anybody and couldn't have beaten anybody. But they didn't get there. That's part of it. And Alabama did.
Yeah.
We'll get into the topic of Nick Saban and whether he was an overachiever or whether he got outcoached by the Darth Vader of college football or not. And we'll talk about that some with Nick as well. But just overall, the quality, there were some mistakes, some poor snaps, what have you. And don't give me that business like her.
The transfer portal now. So Saban probably didn't even let him get
no kidding. Really?
Yeah, he entered the transfer portal. I do have a question for you, though, buddy. Let's say Michigan wins the national title. Mm-hmm. Do they get an asterisk? I mean,
I kind of think they do.
Yeah, your conference told you that you had to be punished because you cheated. Mm-hmm. Yet here you are playing in the national title game. And you got players trying to justify. I don't know if you saw the quotes from J.J. McCarthy today, but he said something
did it right. We all did it right?
Yeah, well, he said, everybody's doing it. 80% of college football stealing signs, and Ohio State had this advantage in 2019, and we just had to, level the playing field. But what he's talking about is in-game sign stealing, which is legal. And that's totally and completely different than what Michigan did. So kind of a cop-out to make it seem the same, because it's not. What Michigan did was against the rules, which is why the Big Ten punished them. And there's still potentially a punishment to come from the NCAA, although, they don't seem to be bothered to do anything these days. So, maybe not. But they get an asterisk for me if they win it.
Me too. And you're right, Allie. There's a big difference in in-game sign stealing, which is part of the game, and sending spies out to record things. So that's not exactly, not the apples and oranges there for sure. And I mean, I must say though, I got to say Michigan really played well. Despite their coach, not having a coach for 6 games apparently didn't hurt them that much. You know,
Sure.
so maybe he ought to take another holiday one this weekend and let him play. But I was impressed the way the team played. And now you want to talk about cheating and what's okay and what's not. Now, I'm not going to compare it to 1984 and the Charlie Pell stuff, whatever, but Florida got its national championship taken away, too, the one they got from the New York Times, and the other is because of cheating. And it isn't the same. There was a lot more violations, I'll guarantee that, but it's still cheating.
Yeah.
You know, whether you cheat a little bit or cheat a lot, and I'm thinking, okay, why do you punish one and not the other? I guess we'll never get the answers to that. But
correct me if I'm wrong, but the cheating Florida was alleged was prior to that season, right? And they just got punished that year.
Correct.
So
that's correct.
you're punishing a group of players that aren't the ones that committed the crime that you are accusing them of. And that's different than Michigan because Michigan's accused of doing it right now.
Yes, that's correct. They got in there. What happened in 81 didn't have that much bearing on what happened in 84 for Florida. But what happened to Michigan now had a big impact on on this season. So there's a big difference. You're absolutely right, Allie. That's a great point. You're absolutely right. So anyway, I mean, let's face it. I think it's easy to not like Michigan's coach. You know, he's just a doofus guy that you he acts goofy and he's not to like, but he's a hell of a football coach, obviously. Yeah. I really love the spirit that team had. And I talked with Urban about this a couple of weeks ago. That night that they were playing in that big game against Ohio State, when they had the kid, their star lineman, went down, and the crowd all was chanting his name. Urban was at that game. He said it was unbelievably incredible, emotional. You know, you could tell they loved that kid. And you could tell that was a bond that team had. And so they got it from somewhere, or Harbaugh or someplace. So you got to give them credit for that at least.
I mean, I think this team supports their coach. You saw that, after that win, they talked about doing it for Harbaugh. I mean, and there's multiple wins where that was the case, right? He wasn't allowed to coach, so he wasn't on the sidelines, and they would win, would cry afterwards. Yeah, and they would say, we won this for Coach Harbaugh. I think that he's clearly a player's coach. His players clearly believe in him, and all of them believe that they did nothing wrong. But that doesn't mean that they didn't do something wrong.
That's a little scary.
And they are all emotional, and they are I think there's lots of cool stories there, and they played incredibly well, and they have played incredibly well all season. But the scandal that took place, we're either being asked to no idea what his underlings were doing, or he orchestrated it, and neither one of those two things are great, right? And regardless, his team got a competitive advantage somewhere along the way. And maybe they didn't have a competitive advantage the last, let's say 8 games of the season or however long before, they got caught. So obviously they stopped. So at some point they stopped having that competitive advantage, but they did win ball games over the course of multiple seasons where they had a competitive advantage. Would they have won without it? I don't know. That's, we can't go back in time, but the fact remains that there were games that they won in that they had an advantage because they cheated. And that doesn't sit well with me.
Cheating is cheating. I mean, how you want to say it, but and it does kind of suck that they didn't pay any penalty for it. There's no penalty they could get penalized and fined, but
on the sidelines, or that he couldn't, be there on game day, but that doesn't mean that he's not still pulling the strings. That doesn't mean that he's not telling his assistant coaches exactly what to do and what to call. And I'm sure he was on the phone and, whatever else. And I think Michigan's a great team. I still just think that this is all sullied by the fact that they did cheat.
Well, we have a lot to talk about with Nick Torre coming up. These coaches, what's going to happen to Saban now? Did he overachieve or underachieve? He brought this team there, got them there, and they got beat. Did he get out coached the last play of the game? Was that a little gamesmanship going on there? What about the future of these other guys? What about Saban? What's going to happen to him? I think he'll still be there. Let's talk about that in just a minute. First, I'll do the spot. We'll bring aboard the guest from the Orange and Blue Room, Nicholas Della Torre, will join us here on the program on the Buddy Martin Show tonight. But first, this message from Titan MRI. Titan MRI is worth the short drive to Gainesville. No insurance, no problem. You can pay with cash or a card with same-day scheduling. Start feeling better today because Titan MRI is North Central Florida's #1 independent MRI facility. Check them out. Come see why hundreds of patients are coming there from Gainesville, Ocala, and nearby places and the villages to see what they've got to offer. TitanMRI.com. My pleasure to introduce the program once again, bring back our friend Nick Torre. What's up, Nicholas?
How are you? Looks like you're in a new spot there, buddy.
I am in a new spot. If you can see out my window here, it's pitch dark, but right in front of me is the beautiful St. Andrews Bay. Right there in front of me. Out in the daytime, I can see it. So it's a nice spot, really good spot to be here. But it's cold up here at night in Northwest Florida. Nick, my gosh, how cold is it where you are, Nick?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Google, but if I start talking to it, I might just talk through the whole show.
Okay, what's that shirt say?
Miami Heat.
Oh, I remember that team. Yeah, for sure. I could use a little Miami Heat right now up here. Hey, so we're talking about the games, the coaches. You heard part of that conversation. But before we go there, let's get the latest update information. I don't know what you saw. Alec told me she saw the All-Star game. A report on DJ Lagway. Alec, give us your take first, and Nick, give us your take.
I mean, I honestly didn't watch particularly closely after Lagway went out, which I believe was in the second quarter. He, his offensive line was terrible, so I don't feel like we saw a whole lot about him. He can scramble, so I guess that's good. He had a not that great of offensive line in high school. He played behind a not that great of offensive line on earlier today. So, I mean, I guess he's not going to feel a fish out of water once against Gainesville.
Yeah, really. Of course, a better defensive line than he saw as well as when he played there. Well, I guess he's all-stars there. And Alec, did he get hurt?
I think he got stepped on. I don't think it's anything major. I think they just were kind of like, maybe we shouldn't continue this. But I'll tell you what, Miles Graham and Aaron Childs were studs today. That was honestly the more impressive play for me.
Nick, what did you see?
Yeah, I think Keith Niebuhr was down there. He talked to DJ after the game and said that he just got stepped on. That was, if it was a high school game, playoffs, or if he was playing in college, probably would have kept playing. But once that adrenaline wears off, buddy, you actually start feeling how bad your foot feels. So it's a really big honor to play in one of these games, whether it's the All-American game or the Under Armour game, and not something the guys are going to pass up. But also, you're going to be driving from Orlando to Gainesville tomorrow to start workouts this week to start the next part of your career, and it's not worth continuing to play, especially if it's affecting the way that you play. He's obviously a great passer, but there is mobility to his game. And if you're not going to be able to play your style of football and you start playing differently, that's when you stand even a bigger chance to get hurt. So I think it's just precautionary. But the two linebackers, Aaron Childs won't be on campus till the summer, but Miles Graham will take, the 10-minute drive over from his home in Gainesville to Gainesville. So both of those guys plan to enroll this week, and I'm excited to see them. I think DJ Lagway is probably the biggest impact player just because of the position he plays, but I think Miles Graham and LJ McCray are two other guys who I think will get on the field and play a bigger impact role than DJ will in 24 with Graham Mertz coming back.
You guys might know this. Someone asked me, says, when's the last time Florida had 2 5-stars in a class? Would it be all the way back to Urban's day? Would that be it? You guys know?
I think the last 5-star was DJ Humphreys.
But the 2-in-1 class, so.
Probably Urban.
It probably was Urban.
Yeah, I thought so, yeah. All right, so let's talk about putting Humpty Dumpty back together again, if that's appropriate way to describe it. It feels like it's all kind of gone downhill to a lot of people. But when you assess it honestly, they still have a top recruiting class. I think someone said today in their latest recruiting rankings, Florida was 15th and Michigan was 14th. So they do have talent in this class. And it just feels like it came apart when they started getting defectors, and we know jumping ship, et cetera, et cetera. Where now do things stand realistically? Can they get a positive spin, if that's the way to say it, back on the program now? And how deep is this hole that the Florida Gators have dug for themselves. Let's start with you, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I don't know how deep the hole is. I used to be a big, you need 4 years to get your guys in. You don't really need that anymore. I don't know that you get that excuse anymore with the transfer portal. Mel Tucker came in and won really big quickly by using the portal. Florida State went undefeated in the regular season, heavily using the portal. I still think if you look at the schools that recruit high school really well, they kind of just supplement through the portal. And that's certainly been Billy Napier and his staff's philosophy, their game plan. Now, I don't know if in their minds or if they were told, hey, you're going to have 4 to 5 years to figure this thing out and right this ship. You might not have 4 to 5 years. If Florida goes 6-6 next year, I don't know that you keep the coaching staff or what Florida would do, what Ben Sass and Scott Strickland would do. So I don't know that you have that much time. And the hard part is it's not a video game. You can't pause what Georgia's doing recruiting. So you're trying to catch up with Georgia, who is putting a record number of guys into the NFL, which all the kids want to go and emulate that and winning championships. So you're trying to catch up to a team that you're going to play every single year in Jacksonville while they're having success and recruiting at an elite level. And because of some of the guys you lost, you are no longer at an elite level, at least in terms of, the recruiting services ranking you.
It does seem almost exhausting, Allie, as a matter of fact, a daunting task. But, I mean, it's been done before. What do you think the necessary steps are, by the way, Allie? And, of course, we know a lot of coaches have cut right to the chase and stopped recruiting high school players and start going to the portal. In your opinion, Allie, what are the things that Billy has to do now immediately to make an impact?
So I think the programs that still recruit high school really well are building programs. That's Georgia, that's Alabama. I think you can build a championship team through the transfer portal, but I think sustaining a good program still requires really heavily recruiting well in high school. Now for Napier, he's got to hit the transfer portal incredibly hard the next couple of weeks because he doesn't have the luxury of building these classes from high school and developing them at this point, in my opinion. I think he has got to win. He's got to be bowl eligible in 2024. I think 7 games is probably, the tipping point in my opinion. You win 7 games, you get to 2025 and you go from there. Maybe you get 6 games. If you win 6 games and you're bowl eligible, maybe you get another year. It's going to kind of depend on how Florida wins and loses, in my opinion. I think that we've talked about this a lot, buddy, and Nick, I don't know if you agree, but I kind of think that part of the frustration with Napier is not even the record this year, but how we got to that record. The fact that there were winnable games we left on the table, and it seems like poor coaching mistakes or lack of discipline cost us those wins. And because that's what we were sold on for Billy Napier, it's additionally frustrating for fans. It's not just the loss, it's how we got there. But I think Napier needs to hit the transfer portal incredibly hard. He's got to announce who that new inside linebackers coach is going to be. We've heard a couple of names tossed around. There's one in particular. I really hope it isn't, but that name needs to come out. Is he hiring an offensive coordinator? Is he not? Nick, you made a really interesting point on Twitter the other day where you said essentially, if he feels like he has more time and he thinks this system's going to work, why would he hire somebody? But also, if he feels like his job's on the line and it's do or die, does he put that in somebody else's hands? And I think that that's really insightful and a really interesting perspective. My opinion is he needs to hire an offensive coordinator. I don't think it's Florida's biggest problem by any means. And I think his offense in general can work. I just don't think he has a great feel for calling the games in the heat of the moment. I think his scripted stuff works incredibly well. I think the system overall is a good one. I also think he cost us at really inopportune times this season. So I think that would help him. I am flabbergasted that we have spent 0 effort this offseason talking about or focusing on special teams. I know that probably bothers you too, Nick. And we saw our preferred walk-on punter coming in saying that he's under the impression it's going to be exactly the same as it was last season, this season. That's scary to me. unless you're the best offense and defense on the field every single time, you sure as heck better get your wins where you can take them. And special teams is one of those places. So I'd hit the transfer portal hard. I'd name my coaches as soon as possible, and I'd focus on some special teams.
Yeah, Nick, getting a new nutritionist was exactly a big headline.
Well, the people were asking me, what do you think about the hire? And I'm like, I don't know. The new nutritionist is always better than the old nutritionist. That's all. That's all I know. And the new strength coach is always better than the old strength coach.
Yeah.
So I don't know about that. And I've gotten some heat for stuff like that I've said. Like, I still think the team is so undisciplined, and you're seeing that, and that's on the position coaches, but everything falls on Billy Napier's desk, and I think he would be better suited taking some of the stuff off of his plate. He's the quarterback's coach. He's the offensive coordinator. He's the head coach. There's just a lot going on. And I agree with Allie. I think they have paralysis by analysis. They just want to know what the outcome of every decision they're going to make could be before they make a decision. You're not making decisions quickly enough on Saturdays. I don't know. My line has been there is not a position open on the coaching staff to hire another offensive coach to call plays. And until that happens, I'm not going to float around, potential job candidates. I don't think the two offensive line coaches are working, but that's something Billy Napier has said he feels very strongly about. So I don't know where you would make room unless you're getting rid of one or two offensive line coaches, or if you get rid of another coach and then you have a receivers coach, say, to come in and is going to be the play caller and coach receivers. You'd have to make room on the staff.
The thing about Billy Gonzalez for me, though, is that that's one of the only groups I think you can look to that actually developed over the course of the season. So do you get rid of someone who, did their job this year? You are carrying some dead weight, at least in my opinion, on the offensive line coaches. The other thing you could do is promote Callaway. So then you're not actually losing or gaining a position there. He's just, the plate, which I don't think is a worst case scenario. I think is it better to bring in outside eyes? Probably, but at least somebody that takes that responsibility off Napier's plate on game day has got to be a help, right?
Yeah, to have another eye to be like, hey, we have 7 guys on for this field goal. Maybe we should get 4 more on the field. Just somebody else.
Sidelines and count every Saturday. I promise you, I can count to 11 every single time. And truly, I don't know what you've heard, Nick or Buddy, what you, but Eric tells me that when they would go out for special teams, that it would be an assistant strength coach that would stand with them and make sure they have the right number of people. Urban was the special teams coach, so he's on the headset and he's calling it in, but that an assistant strength coach is who was standing with them with the headset on and making sure they're counting. We have the largest staff in college football. Somebody can't stand there and count.
Really?
They sell mats at Dick's Sporting Goods that have 10 circles on them. And you get the 10 guys who aren't the punter or the kicker to stand on their circles. You look down, hey, we got 11 sets of feet on circles. Let's go.
Yeah. If they can have a get back coach, on the sideline, they can have a coach that takes care of the numbers. It's just I don't know. I have a lot of issues. Maybe I'm just old school. I don't quite understand it, but I'm thinking, okay, you had. The weak point on the offense last year was the offensive line. Where'd they have the most coaches? 2 offensive line. Okay. The issue seemed to be getting the right number of people on the field, knowing assignments, et cetera, on special teams. Who's the special team coach? They got a guy that has a game changer title, but I don't think of him as a special teams coach. That actually
would be the number one thing I'd change this offseason.
Yeah, I asked her and found out about it. He said he's the number one. He said the head coach is the special teams coach, period. It has to be. Why? Because if you want to get your premier athletes on the field, all these future number one draft choices who don't want to play, then you got to have authority over them. And say, you want to play here? Like David Nelson back in the day. Get on the special teams play. That's another thing. I think the quality of some of the hires are in question. It seems to me like, no offense to anybody, but I don't know if I'd be looking for my offensive coordinator from Liberty or not. I just don't know if that's what they're doing.
hard position hiring wise because I mean,
sure it's hard, yeah, because Billy's not going to give it up anyway.
Well, but also you're saying, okay, I know for sure I got 1 year, but I can't promise you more than that. Do you want to upgrade your life and come here? Somebody from Liberty, where it's a resume build, regardless of what happens afterwards, is going to say yes. You're not convincing, another SEC offensive coordinator.
I agree.
That's a hard sell.
So Nick, is Florida being a rock and a hard place, so to speak, because they can't, like you see, got dead men walking. Some people saying, Billy, you don't want to come coach your guys not going to be there after the 7th game of the season. You've got to get players, but players aren't going to come someplace where they can't get great NIL money. And the NIL money can't be exactly falling off the back of turnip trucks these days. They have a real dilemma how to fix this thing. And I want to ask you both two things. A, I asked you this earlier, Allie. You mentioned the transfer portal. What do they need to do now? And the fact is about how fast they do it does matter. It does matter because there's perception that Billy is a half a beat behind ever since he's gotten there. I mean, what were they talking about when Billy got here? Oh, the new facility. When did we get that, baby? We'll be racking them up then, right? Well, it turns out maybe they should have invested that money not in bricks and mortar, but in people and players and talent acquisitions, the way things are going, looking at the transfer portal and looking at how people are building their teams. So looking back at that, this is a comprehensive, confusing question. I guess it's number one, if Billy were getting a mulligan to start over right now, knowing what he knows, Nick, what should he do?
Well, I mean, that building already had Dan Mullen's signature on it. I remember going to that event when Dan was still the coach and they were building it. But yeah, I think it was just getting Florida back to even par with everyone else. I think they had to do it. I also don't think you need to be investing in infrastructure like buildings right now. Yeah. Florida Victorious, I remember asking them before they bought or merged with Gator Collective, what are you going to be doing different to get more people to sign up? They haven't really gotten more people to sign up. Yeah. To the extent of other collectives, the Grove Collective with Ole Miss is incredible.
Killing the portal.
I don't think any of Florida's coaches promote Florida Victorious the way that Lane Kiffin. I constantly see him on my feed promoting the Grove and their other coaches, basketball, women's basketball, promoting it. Florida Victorious is not having money trouble paying players, but you're not going to get the same money. And I think what Florida is dealing with is donor fatigue. You're going to the same people who just gave you 6 figures to build a building, and now you're asking them to give you 6 figures every single year because you need 10, 12, 13, 14, $15 million a year just for NIL, not to get new players, but just to keep your players before you even start adding a recruiting class. So there's not really a return on investment with a lot of these, player deals. So it's a weird spot for college football because you're going to get to a place where you're asking the same millionaire donors to write these checks. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not getting my name on a building anymore. What is this for? Oh, it's so our starting linebacker doesn't leave. Yeah. And we have to give him an extra $4,000 a month and we need this money. And I guess the return on investment for that is seeing your team win, which they haven't seen their team win 11-14 since Billy Napier has been here. So I think there's just donor fatigue, and you can fix some of that with a winning product on the field, but I don't know that it's a long-term fix. And I think I'm starting to lean towards the side of you need some kind of salary cap to level the playing field. Now, if you want to go out and Titan MRI wants to sign Shamar James, wants to sign DJ Lagway, cool. That's not part of the salary cap, but here's a salary cap of what the collectives, each school's collective can pay for the 85 roster.
Yeah. Well, you ask what Napier can do in hindsight. If he got a mulligan, he had his list of demands from the UAA, the university, when he took this job. And they, we've heard they're about having the largest staff or having this facility or that or whatever. I think in hindsight, he should say, I need you to be 100% on board with NIL, because I think that there's this internal battle that happens between the UAA and Florida Victorious where there is only so large of a pool. And so I think that sometimes UAA is like, oh, no, don't ask that person for this because we want to ask them for that. And it's almost a battle over those funds instead of this is the moment we're in college football right now. And if we want to win, it's going to go into people. I think because there is so little return on investment for basically anybody except the national championship team, essentially, that the things are going to level out eventually. People are getting donor fatigue. They will continue to get donor fatigue, and people are not going to give hundreds of thousands of dollars for years on end for nothing. Right. So I think that we will see a balance kind of restore. Right now we're in the wild, wild west. I think a great way to help out would be for universities to be able to do this, because right now the money that the university has can't go towards players at all. So instead we're asking families, oh, you have 4 kids and you are paying for private school tuition and gas and this and that. We need you to go ahead and also pay for this 18-year-old who has proven nothing on the field, who wants to drive a car nicer than you. Please sign up to do that every single month. And that's a hard sell. But it's the position.
And I find it gross, too. We have millionaire coaches asking those families who might be living paycheck to paycheck, hey, I'm going to lose my Mercedes, free Mercedes car that the school gives me and my $1 million checks. So I need you to write so I can get this player. I think if, like, Billy Napier could, he would probably donate, hey, I'll do match up to $1 million, whatever we can get into the collective. You just can't do that.
Right.
I know one of my good friends, Ben Chase, works for the UAA. He can't be a member of Florida Victorious because he works for the UAA. I think there's a lot of changes. We've called it the Wild Wild West, but we're 2 years into it. At some point, I think you need to bring some sheriffs into town, buddy.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting blamed here by one guy who says that why don't you guys in the media shut up and give money? It's our job to give money, all right?
I'm not a fan. I just cover the team.
Yeah, well, exactly, and it's not our job either. But I don't understand separation of church and state, I guess. Anyway, so back to the question at hand. Such a hard question to answer because there is no answer. What's Billy going to do? And even Urban Meyer last week said, I feel sorry for Billy. Because of the situation he's in. However, he makes plenty of money. Mm-hmm. He gets paid to deal with this. So let's not forget those millions of dollars. What's his buyout now? 13 million? No, 31 million? Well, I don't even know anymore. There's so much. But this buyout's big, and he makes plenty of money. What's he up to? 7 million now, Allie? Is that what he makes? So
over 7.5.
But you have a dilemma here about what to do. It's a chicken and egg thing. What do you do? And in my mind, the things we talked about, perception is everything here right now. Florida's a half a beat behind everything. Like right now, why aren't they out trying to hire some people or at least make it look like they're in the portal trying to find people? I mean, there doesn't appear to be any appearance or anything going on. It doesn't feel like there's anything going on, Allie.
The PR is just as big a problem as anything else, in my opinion. I think there are so many things that Napier could do to help himself, and he hasn't. And the whole
so give me a couple.
Saying nothing. Okay, so I'll give you an example. When Bateman took the Texas A&M job, and Ernest Graham took to Twitter, and he was clearly very unhappy with it. Mm-hmm. I think Napier could have put something out that said, just this morning, Coach Bateman let us know that he had the opportunity to go to Texas A&M to become the defensive coordinator. Obviously, the timing stinks, but such is life in college football. We wish him the best of luck every Saturday but one. That tells everybody he just found out that morning. He didn't know beforehand. And it makes him look classy because it's a coach leaving for what is a promotion. And I think that would have shut a lot of people up because people thought, because Napier didn't clarify anything, that he knew that was happening prior to signing day and said nothing, which does not appear to be the case. But you need to advocate for yourself. Something that simple, a tweet that simple, could have shut so much down before it even got started. But instead, you say nothing and people make up their own narrative.
Yeah, Yeah, he said this to me multiple times, both on and off the record. We just need to win games. The problem is you're not, and you won't have the opportunity until August. So you're losing battles of perception, and I think it's kind of just brushed off as like, okay, well, if we went 8-4 and 8-4, and we're 16-8, people wouldn't be talking about that right now. And I want to be like, well, they ran Ron Zook out of town for going 8-4. So yes, they would still.
They ran
so to me, it's
out of town, who won 3 New Year's Six bowls out of 4 years. Like that's, did you not know the people that you were getting in bed with here? Like we're all nuts.
Yeah.
That's the way that this works. But perception is reality. And you got to sell hope or you got to sell wins, and you're not selling wins right now. So let people know that you care. You're just as pissed off as everybody else. And it is your mission to fix things. You are, and we know nobody wants to win more than Billy Napier wants to win. I don't like the concept that like fans think that they know better or want better than the people that are in that locker room, but that's not the vibe that they give off.
Yeah, there's that perception for sure, and there's also a sort of backlash in general at University of Florida about some of the things taking place. Here's David Arnoff, a guy that I know, and I hear this story all the time, talking about how his kids were denied to get in at Florida, and obviously we're good students. Why should I give them money? They want to give my kids a chance to go to school. And I talked to a friend of mine last week whose son is going to Auburn. He said he was a 4.6 average, top ACTs, could not get into Florida. There's a perception, although I don't think it's true, because in our reporting we tracked it down and did that it's a lot easier if you're Asian or Hispanic if you have the same grades than it is for somebody off the street in Florida. They're taking more out of the country students now than they were. I don't know if that's true or not, but there is that perception. So there's that kind of, Allie, you're a multiple legacy. I mean, your grandfather, your father, whatever. I mean, your girls are going to, your girls are going to go to school. You don't get any break for being a legacy family. So there's, you ask but you don't give. There's that perception that there's a lot of asking, not much giving. Nick, you're right. You got poor guys out there, they're on the street begging for money. They're making $3 million a year, but they're begging for dollars. It's a difficult thing to justify. Well, back to the program at hand, and that is, we know what's ahead. It's not a secret that whoever made the schedule for 2024 hated Billy Napier. I mean, it's just, the hardest schedule in the history of Florida football, probably. It could be a little respite there. And Allie, we talked about it last week. Nick, if you look at the schedule, the winnable games are the first 6. You got more potential wins there. The back half, forget about it. So the question is, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Can he win enough games to hold serve? And to hold serve and see the year out and hope to get 6 wins and get another year. What's your perception of that, Nick? You think it's possible?
I think the schedule is more name brand. I mean, obviously things can still change with the transfer portal, but you look at Miami, they've lost, I think, their first and second string quarterback. Sanford should be a win. Texas A&M brings their quarterback back, but an entirely new coaching staff. At Mississippi State should be a win. UCF just got KJ Jefferson. He already has experience winning a ball game in the swamp. Yeah. Nico Amaviella, I'm saying that wrong. I apologize. At Tennessee is going to be tough. Kentucky loses their quarterback. Georgia's a loss. At Texas is probably a loss. LSU loses their quarterback. FSU loses 18 players, their quarterback. And we see DJU going there. So I was working on a story seeing what teams have coming back, but I think the schedule looks harder on paper than it could be, just because it's so many name brands. But we have to look and see, hey, Florida's not playing 2020 or 2021 Georgia. Yes, Georgia's going to be very good, but they're not playing Jaden Daniels-led LSU. And Garrett Nussmeier looked good, but it's a completely different style than Jaden Daniels, who I think put up 18,000 yards against Florida on that night in Baton Rouge. So it's a tough schedule, but like you said, I said before this year, I said you need to catch wins early because you'll catch hands late. And they were 5-2 at the bye week and lost out. So, yeah, same thing again this year. Catch wins early because you might catch hands late.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and Allie, here's the worst part. After all, taking the beating, who comes to town but Lane Kiffin? Beat your brains out, right? I mean, that's all they need. You know, the guy that wanted the job at Florida and couldn't get a call back, and now his team looks awesome in the bowl game, and now they got supposed the best of anybody in the portal, the best players of anybody. So you know he's loaded. So it's gonna be tough. You better batten down the hatches. Meanwhile, on the waterfront, I hope you can hang with us for a minute, Nick. I want to get your take on prime time. Did you see the latest thing he said? He came out and announced that he expects to make the playoffs this year. And he says on Stephen A. Smith's show said he inherited a roster that was atrocious and claimed the issues were inexperienced in year one that will be fixed. So despite outperforming the expectations, Dion acknowledges the season wasn't perfect. He admitted he made mistakes. There were made mistakes made with his coaching hires, and now pledging to be more hands-on next season. And even though he didn't have that good a year, the perception is he set it on fire, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Prime's always going to be his biggest fan. I don't think Colorado is a playoff team next year. What is a playoff team? I think if Florida goes 9-3 against that schedule, they're probably in the playoff since there's 12 teams next year. I don't know who is on Colorado's schedule. I know he gets his son Shador back, but sure, you might have inherited a bad roster, but you also signed more transfer portal players than anybody last year. So that was most of your team, or at least half of the roster were guys that you brought in. I don't think that they're a playoff team next year, especially the way that they looked. And they're trying to do it again, building through the transfer portal for a quick fix. They have had some sets.
Not particularly impressive.
You get some guys like a Jordan Seaton shows up, but is he ready to be your starting left tackle and play at a playoff caliber team level as an 18, 19-year-old kid going up against – are they going to the Big 12? Is that where they're going, Colorado?
Yes.
Going up against, I guess, my school, UCF is in the Big 12 now too, going up against, UCFs and schools like that. So I don't think so. Prime's always going to be a great promoter, a great self-promoter, and his biggest fan. So it doesn't surprise me that he says that, but I don't agree with it, no.
Well, he's projected to go 7-5 next year.
Well, he's selling hope, like we talked about. He couldn't sell wins. He's great at selling hope right now. I will say he committed what your buddy Urban Meyer will say is a cardinal sin. When I had Urban on, he said that he cringes anytime he hears a coach say, I need to get my guys in. Because he said the second you become the head coach of a program, they're all your guys. And if you act like they aren't, you're going to cause a major rift in the locker room, and it's going to be hard to recover from that. And I think about that all the time. And obviously at Florida, we've said things like, well, when Billy gets his guys in, or when Billy, and it really gave me pause when Urban said that, because truly that's true. And I think about when he came in 2005 and what those players were feeling like. And Betty, I've told you the story, but like Eric was hell bent on hating Urban until he had his first team meeting. And then he left willing to run through a wall for the guy. And it hasn't changed over 20 years. And, you want to win. You want to build a program. You want to build a culture. You better embrace every single person in that locker room, because they didn't pick you. You picked them. And, so I honestly, that's a negative sign for me that's how he leads with.
Now, one of my favorite stories is when Eric came back from surgery. And they had the first champions dinner, back that was a big deal with Urban. And Eric went to go sit down and said, no, you're over there. You're not over here. Why? Well, you weren't here at practice. He was out. He had surgery. So he didn't get his steak that night. But who got him his steak that night, Allie?
I got him his steak that night. I went out back and got him his steak. And it did change the rules after that. So when you had surgery, still make Champions Club. But I just... There's a right and a wrong way to rebuild a program. I'm not saying Prime's not doing it in the right way, but that wouldn't be a great sign for me. But I think he's great at selling hope, and we'll see. And he's got guys coming in the transfer portal. I think it's really lofty to call your shot, when you're Colorado looking at what their record was this season and say you're making the playoff next year. But he's got guys coming in, so we'll see.
Yeah, got a nice crowd watching tonight, folks. Thank you for that. These two people are great on what they do, and they're very bright, and they bring you a new perspective to covering Florida football and the ins and outs of it, not just the stuff read off the wires. You mentioned this earlier, Nick, the 12-team playoff, how good it will be. Will it be good or bad for the SEC? Because in a way, that's a lot of the pretenders in the side door a little bit. Maybe a few teams that might have gotten in would not get in because of, and those that aren't, of course, get a chance to go to the bowl game. So overall, would it be good for the SEC and good for Florida? That's the 12-team playoff. Nick.
It'll be interesting. It's kind of an experiment in year one. I think we're going away from a Power 5. I think there's really a Power 2. You've got the Big Ten and the SEC, just in terms of TV contracts, eyeballs watching them, importance to the geographical locations that they are, and importance to the schools, donor bases and fan bases. And if it does become a bad thing for either of those conferences, I think that the commissioners of both conferences will quickly say, listen, we only need the NCAA to run Olympic tournaments after the season, to run the baseball tournament, to run the track and field championships and the swimming championships. We don't need them for football. They need us for football, and they'll just take their ball and go do their own thing. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in year one, because like I said, I think a 9-3 Florida, is that a top 12 team in the country? I don't know that it is, but I think if Florida goes 9-3 in that schedule, you can make a case that they should be in a 12-team tournament to determine the national champion. But you might have 11 teams that don't have 3 losses, and not have a 3-loss SEC team in. All
right, I'll let you get out of here, Nick, and I want to have one more to ask Valley about her comments today about the parents on your podcast. Allie, why don't you explain that a little bit? But Nick, tell people where they can read you, what your Twitter address is, etc. Top notch. Baseball is also one of his specialties. If you want to follow baseball, he's as good as it gets. Not that he's not good at other things too. Nick, where can people find you and read you?
Gators Online. I think we're running like a $1 for a month promo over there. If you want to check us out, you can do so for the cheap. And then Twitter @Delatorre, just my last name, and Instagram @Nick Delatorre. There's just pictures of my dogs. Not really Gator related.
And your bride now too, by the way.
Yep.
Yeah. Congratulations on that. And so Nick, next big story you're going to break is what?
Offensive coordinator would be super cool. But
you got one in mind? You know one?
No. I told you.
Not Willie Corn, right?
Until there's a job opening. No. Florida was quick to put the Willie Corn story to bed. I don't know. I'm not convinced that Billy will. I said I thought he should. He needed to get more control over his organization. I'm just not convinced that he will. And I think it goes to, if he doesn't think that his job's on the line, why would he change? The offense wasn't the problem. He could stand there, and when he does his self-evaluation, look himself in the mirror and say, if our defense gets a couple more stops, we win 9 games. And it wasn't the offense's problem. And if he does think, well, shoot, if we don't win 8 games next year, my job's done, let me give my future and control of my program to somebody else.
Well, if somebody could count to 11, you probably win 2 more games. So, that'd be the easiest.
Ooh, that was good. Well, I mean, look, you're right. Absolutely. And here's the thing. As bad as it sounded and looked, it really wasn't disastrous. Like you said, they're within an earshot, inches from winning a couple more games. They just couldn't get it done. I saw a thing about Bud Grant the other day on the NFL channel about Bud Grant saying, to be a champion, you got to win the close games. Steve Spurrier talks about it all the time. You got to win the close games. If they could have won those close games, we'll be having this conversation right now. But they didn't. They got to figure out why and get that fixed. Great stuff, Nick. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for coming on.
Good seeing you, Allie. Good seeing you, buddy. Talk to you later.
Thank you. All right, Allie, just give me this one little minute to do this. And I want you to tell me about the moments of commitments and how the commitment moments have gotten out of hand. It's something that's very ticks off a lot of people. Let's hear first from Melvin Law. I'll come back and get you on that. Jeffrey, looking forward to a great 2024 and being together with you and your wife to celebrate some special occasions.
Yeah, and buddy, I want to tell our Gator fans out there that Todd Golden is the real deal. Okay. In 1 year, he's put together this really tall team that's going to out-rebound just about everybody that they play. They've got some great shooters. We got 3 or 4, guards in there that are awesome.
Yep.
And I predict that the Gators are going to be a ranked team by the end of the season, and that you wait and see. They're going to make some noise around March Madness.
Sounds exciting. You'll be right there to report from courtside. Give us the inside scoop, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and January 6th is Meldon Law Day. We're playing Kentucky at the O-Dome. It's Meldon Law Day. We've got special shirts for everybody.
Giving stuff away again like you do all over the place. You're giving stuff away.
But it's going to be
Meldon Law. They'll back down to give away free T-shirts. That game's coming up on the 6th. Florida, Kentucky. Allie, what I like about you is sometimes you take a more humanistic look at things and talk about the people who are not in the spotlight, and they consider the people who were part of this fabric of college football. You wrote today, as ridiculous as some of these commitment moments are, and some have gotten out of hand, I can't help but get choked up when I watch parents and guardians. All I see is the hours of driving to and from practice, the dinners in the car, the late nights, the sacrifices. It's hard to put into the words the hard work and dedication it takes from the entire family to groom a top-notch athlete. I hope every one of those players is so grateful for all the adults that have invested emotionally, physically, financially, etc., into helping them chase their dreams. Well said. I got a story about it. When you get done, tell me what you're talking about.
You know, I was watching a commitment today in the All-American game that was on, and it was nothing that was super over the top. But sometimes, they bring out the live alligator. They, throw the hats on the ground. Like, some of it has gotten out of hand. But you look at the people standing behind the athlete, the mom and dad, or the grandma, the aunt and the uncle, the siblings, the younger sisters and brothers who get dragged to all of this. And, you think about, I'm one of 7 kids. I watched my parents take all of us to soccer practice, cheerleading, football. I know what went into all of that, the injuries, the stress, of figuring out the weekend schedule. How do I get to all of these things and make sure everybody gets to where they're supposed to be? It is so much. And these parents did it for, at this point, 17, 18 years. Their kids are a senior in high school. And you do it because your child has this dream of playing college football at the next level, wearing that logo, that they grew up rooting for, now these days maybe paid them the most money or, whatever. But for years and years and years, they were the unsung hero that helped these kids get there. Nobody achieves anything great on their own. And that's not a sports thing. That's a life thing, right? And I just always think about that when I see these commitments, all the people standing in the background, because those are the people that help make this happen. And obviously this kid has to be talented and dedicated, but that came from somewhere. And that came from the people that raised him.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you a story about somebody that I know, an example of what you're talking about. These parents had a girl underdeveloped somewhat physically in the 8th grade who wanted to run track. And the mother got involved with the team, and they happened to have an SUV, or actually had a motorhome at the time. So she made it a point to give all the girls a ride to every meet. She took them everywhere. They all got in the motorhome, and she drove them there. And an entire year, that 8th grade girl who was on that team did not get to run in a single race. Yet she drove that team every week to practice. So the following year, when the time came to go out for track again, this girl came and told her dad, I think I'm going to go out for track, Dad, this year. And the dad said, maybe not. Maybe it's not your sport. It's okay. It's okay. You didn't get to run it all last year. No, but I think I can do it this year, Dad. Okay, well, good. I'll support you. Then go for it, all right? So time goes on, And maybe 3 or 4 weeks go by, and she had trained all year, and she comes up to her dad and says, you know what? I'm going to run Saturday in our meet. Oh, that's great. So the JV's out. No, Dad, not the JV, the varsity. Really? Yeah, I'm going to run the varsity. I said, oh, first his dad said, oh my gosh, I hope this is not going to be a bad experience for her. So the race started, the gun went off, and there's this little stick of a girl who's now a little more mature, lined up against 3 other juniors and seniors from different high schools. The gun goes off, and lo and behold, all the parents are saying is hope she can get around the track 4 times. It's a mile. Can she get around the track 4 times? So lo and behold, she leads the first lap, and the parents say, wow, that's great. That's really nice that you got to lead for a lap. And then the second lap came around, and she's leading the second lap. And the parents say, well, this probably won't last, but sure been fun watching her compete like this. And then she starts drifting back a little bit, and then she kicks it up, and now she takes the lead in the third lap. Now she's coming down the stretch, and she's within 2 or 3 lengths ahead of the girl behind her. And you're thinking, oh, my gosh, can this be happening? Can this really be true, you know? And next thing you know, the dad has left the stands and is down on the track. You know, you're cheering, go, go, go. You know, and in that moment, it made everything worthwhile to see that finish that race, because that girl who couldn't even run in a race a year before, but her mom took her every week and just didn't discourage her, go back out there, and she won the race. She won the race, and it was big schools, St. Pete High and those schools, you know, and she won the race, which told you don't ever stop believing in your kid.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I get choked up hearing stories like that. I think about, like, Eric's dad had this whistle. He could whistle in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, and Eric could find him.
Yeah. Oh, really?
You know,
that's a great story.
It didn't matter where he was. Eric would be able to locate him because of his whistle. And that's what makes our sports so cool. You know, the stories that happen in the background, the what gets you to where you are and you get to celebrate. And those are also the kind of stories that I think that things like NIL and the transfer portal kind of take away from.
Yes.
Because we don't get 4 years of hearing about this stuff before we get to see the kid finally win the race, right?
Yes.
In this transfer portal era, if that child was in college, they would have transferred 3 times because they didn't get to run. Yeah. And those are the things that it concerns me that we're going to miss out on eventually if this kind of stuff doesn't level out a little
100%. 100%. And God bless you for saying that. By the way, that dad was me and that was my daughter.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
So you learn the lessons. Always believe in your kids. Don't stop believing in them, you know?
Yep.
And so thank you for all bringing those insights as a parent, as a mom, you know, what you do. I love what you represent, Allie. And the fact that your kids are competitive, out there doing it, you and Eric, congratulations to you. Even if they don't ever get a letter in it, they're competing. That's the key right there. And you never know what could happen.
And the lessons you learn along the way from sports are, you know, pretty valuable life lessons.
Yeah, and then it turns out that the kids are right a lot of times. The parents are wrong. Allie, thank you so much for... Yeah, I really appreciate all you do and represent. Thank you for spending the full hour of it tonight. I know it was not easy, but thank you. It's wonderful. As you can see by the number of people watching, they love you, and we love having you on. So hope to get you on again next week, Allie.
Absolutely. Sounds good, buddy.
Thank you so much.
Have a great night.
Thank you. All right, Allie Pete Wibur, she always writes up our life every week. I want to tell you about a sponsor I've got that I'm very proud to be with. That they've supported me for so long and so many times I couldn't thank them enough. I couldn't say the words here that really would thank them enough for what they've done. A company there in Ocala, represent their fine stakeholders in downtown Ocala. They've had representatives of athletic teams, one of them a Gator football player, and but they committed to the community in more ways than one to sponsor events and things and support people. And they supported this show for a long time. They have a patient-centered clinical research facility right there in downtown Ocala. Red Star Medical Research brings cutting-edge clinical research trials to Ocala in areas like Alzheimer's, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, dementia, migraine, and fibromyalgia, along with many other conditions that affect our community. So, since their inception in 1998, RenStar participated in more than 700 clinical research trials. They continue to partner with prominent pharmaceutical and biomedical companies throughout the medical industry to find a better way to treat us. They're doing these clinical research trials. If you're interested in taking part in them, sometimes you can get compensated for time of travel. Go to renstar.net, look at their website, find out how you can qualify, possibly take part in this. They want that information from us right here in our community so they can better find ways to treat us. RenStar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. I want to thank our special guest tonight. It's always great to have Allie P. Wibur, Nick Torre bringing a lot tonight to the table, and you were all great. Thanks to our sponsors, RenStar, Titan MRI, and Meldon Law. Have a good night. Back tomorrow night with the fellows. We'll have Orange Blue Bud Thursday with Ben and Jang. So be sure and join us in right here on the Buddy Martin Show. Good night.